From the banks of the Colorado River in Lake Mead to the homes and businesses in Southern Nevada, welcome to Water Smarts, the podcast pumping from the heart of Las Vegas, where we engage with the experts who keep the water flowing throughout Southern Nevada. I'm Bronson Mack.
And I'm Crystal Zuelke. From how we treat it, deliver it, use it, protect it, and conserve it, the Water Smarts podcast is all about water in Southern Nevada. We hope to make you a little smarter about the one thing that keeps us all connected: water.
Hey, Crystal, how are you today?
Doing pretty good, Bronson. But, you know, it's an end of an era here in Las Vegas.
End of an era?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Well, the Mirage Hotel Resort on the Las Vegas Strip just closed recently. Did you get a chance to see it before it shut its doors?
I'm glad you asked that, actually, because I did. And I think you're right. It is the end of an era in a lot of respects. I mean, from the standpoint that the Mirage really did change the face of the Las Vegas Strip. I mean, the resorts we know today on the Las Vegas Strip did not exist before the Mirage. The Mirage set that standard. So, yeah, I did get a chance to take a walk back through about a month before it closed. My wife and we wanted to take our kids. We took them really just so that my kids could say at some point 10, 20, 30 years from now, I remember when my parents took me to the Mirage. And I think what was most remarkable for me was really what hasn't changed with the Mirage. I mean, just walking in, it's a lot of that same feeling that I used to get. I used to go there a lot when I was in high school. But like the atrium inside and all of the plant life that they have, that was really unique and I think is still rather unique to any other property on the Las Vegas Strip. But the Mirage set the standard, so I guess you are absolutely right. It is the end of an era in that sense.
Yeah, and I know MGM didn't own Mirage initially, but let's see, the Mirage was there for 35 years, and I know we have an employee here whose dad worked there since the first day it opened. He just finished off 35 years there. So yeah, anyway, I just thought I was thinking about that because the face of the Las Vegas Strip is evolving again.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that evolution now really is focused on sustainability and technology. There is a benefit to the bottom line of the resort industry by making investments in improving the efficiency of their operations. Water is one of those things that has certainly been focused on. And today, one company in Southern Nevada down there on the Las Vegas Strip that is leading the way in sustainable practices in water conservation is the MGM Resorts, which owns about a dozen hotels down there on the Strip. And here today to talk about how the MGM is helping protect our water supply, we have Michael Gulich, Vice President of Sustainability for MGM Resorts, and Mike Bernardo, Conservation Manager for the Southern Nevada Water Authority. Gentlemen, welcome to the Water Smarts podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Excited to be here.
Well, we are really excited to have both of you. We've got a lot of good information to share with our listeners. And just by coincidence, we do have two Michaels on this podcast. So for this conversation, Michael Gulich, let's start with you. SNWA considers MGM Resorts to be a water hero locally. I mean, the company has implemented several water-saving initiatives over the past few years, and that's not even counting all of the initiatives that have been implemented over the past decade or more. But these efforts have really included replacing high water use equipment with innovative water-saving technology, replacing water-thirsty grass with artificial turf or drip irrigated plants, as well as some pretty significant employee education that you do with your employee base to be good water stewards. But before we discuss some of those programs, Michael, can you just talk a little bit about why MGM Resorts is so committed to conservation and saving water?
Sure. So let's start with who MGM is. So MGM is a global gaming and entertainment company with a critical mass of properties here in Las Vegas, but we also operate 7 regional properties throughout the U.S., as well as 2 in China, and we're in the process of building Japan's first gaming integrated resort. Given that we do have that critical mass here in Las Vegas, and we are reliant on Colorado River water and water conservation have been really a critical focus for us for a long time, and we're only ramping up that focus. Of course, water is important for our guests, whether that's drinking water or for bathing or for dining, but also in terms of operations, we use a lot of water in our cooling towers for the irrigation of our landscaping. And then we have a host of pools and water features. We do have several water goals, and our current water goal was to achieve 33% reduction on a square footage basis. We call it an intensity basis by 2025, and then 35% reduction by 2030, and that's on a 2007 baseline. And I'm really excited to report that we achieved our 2030 goal in 2023. So we achieved that 7 years early. And collectively, we've saved over a business as usual case, almost 14 billion, with a B, billion gallons of water since we started tracking this back in mid 2000s. About 3/4 of our water use is non-consumptive. And so that's water that ultimately is making its way to a drain and back to SNWA. It's a fantastic filtration and treatment system, and it's being captured and resent to Lake Mead for reuse. I'd also like to just say, in terms of sustainability, and I get asked a lot, why is it important? Why is it good for business? There's really 4 points there that I want to hit on. One is that we're deeply invested in the communities in which we operate. Our staff is vital to us and to our operations, and it's literally where they live. It's where we live. And so our commitments around energy and water and waste, we're committed to those in our communities. Secondly, there is an expectation from our investors, and we get requests for data and asks about our initiatives from investors all the time. We, of course, have to balance that with our fiduciary responsibilities, but it's definitely something that's always on our mind. And then thirdly, many of these sustainability initiatives, they do save us money, especially in the long term. So sometimes we have to adjust our time horizon in that evaluation. And then finally, it's the right thing to do. And we very much are a values-based company.
Well, Michael, you hit on a lot of great points there, and I know we're going to kind of touch on those a little bit more as we go throughout. But one of the things that you mentioned and made me think about our social media and the type of comments we get often. And I don't know about you if you see these as well, but there is a big misconception out there in the community that resorts use more water than residential customers. And while that's true if you compare, let's say, the Bellagio Hotel to just one home, it's not accurate when you compare the water use from all the resorts to all the residential customers in Southern Nevada. So I feel like we need to address the elephant in the room before we dive deeper into some of the conversation here about the property's pools and water features specifically. I know people see the fountains of Bellagio and they think, oh my gosh, all that water waste here in the middle of the desert. So what do you have to say to those who say, why should I conserve water when resorts like MGM or the Bellagio have those large pools and fountains?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've heard it said that the Bellagio Fountain, the water in the Bellagio Fountain is some of the hardest working water in Las Vegas. And I definitely agree with that. Starting at the beginning, it's important to note that the water that we use to replenish the water in Lake Bellagio that evaporates is not from Colorado River water. It's supplied by groundwater wells and therefore doesn't directly impact Southern Nevada's water supply. Also, the water for the O swimming pool gets recycled into Lake Bellagio. A couple times a year that gets emptied and replenished, and we're reusing that water. I think it's important to note for all of our pools and water features, and even for our cooling towers as well, that have chemical treatment. We're working with our in-house and our out-of-house vendors on chemical and water treatment to make sure that that treatment is optimized and that the water is reused as many times as possible before it's replaced. Additionally, we have a system at our Shark Reef Aquarium at the Mandalay Bay, which is a great amenity if you haven't been there to see it. We're reusing and recycling the water there in terms of the filtration, and that saves over 2 million gallons of water per year. I'd also mention that some of our properties use groundwater for the landscape irrigation, and notably Bellagio. And our irrigation systems are state-of-the-art, and we're using smart irrigation controllers and soil sensors and anemometers that sense if we're in windy conditions that control and optimize that water use.
Yeah, and this is why the MGM has continually demonstrated such wonderful partnership, not just with us as a water utility, but with the community as a whole, to really be stewards of the water supply, just like we all need to be. I really appreciate that you brought up the fact that the O show, where it's that great water show, when that water needs to be turned over, that it goes into Lake Bellagio. That gets a reuse of that water. That makes a lot of sense. Lake Bellagio, using only groundwater, does not touch any of the Colorado River water supplies that we bring into the valley for our municipal water use. And I guess the other kind of interesting thing there, because you mentioned the pools, we have a lot of backyard swimming pools in Southern Nevada, and Unless you're somebody who's continually throwing the party for all of your neighbors, most of our backyard swimming pools are serving a few people, maybe a half dozen or so people a year. Meanwhile, these pools that we have down on the Las Vegas Strip are easily serving tens of thousands of people each. So those are some of the hardest working pools that we have here in Las Vegas. I guess one other just interesting fact there, Michael, with regards to Lake Bellagio is before the Bellagio existed, it was the Dunes Hotel, kind of that legendary Dunes Hotel. And the Dunes had a golf course associated with it, and that golf course used groundwater. With that golf course being removed and now the Bellagio in place, those groundwater rights that once were serving that golf course are now providing the economic benefit of filling Lake Bellagio. And people come from all over the world to stand there on the Las Vegas Strip and watch that beautiful fountain do its thing. So it's a good economic addition that we have to our community. Mike, Bernardo, anything else to add there from an SNWA perspective?
Yeah, I guess, Michael did a great job of really teeing it up and explaining the situation and our return flow credits and consumptive versus non-consumptive. Maybe I'll just put a finer point on it. So throughout the resort industry in general on the Strip, 70 to 80% of the water is non-consumptive. So our leadership has said before, if you go into all of the hotels at the same time, turn every faucet and shower and flush the toilets all at the same time indoors, that water will go down into the sanitary sewer, go into one of several water treatment facilities, get discharged into the Las Vegas Wash, which is an urban river, eventually makes its way to Lake Mead. And for every gallon that we put into Lake Mead is a gallon that we can then pump out of Lake Mead without any net impact to our Colorado River entitlement. So that's really the secret sauce to how we're able to operate so efficiently. And the goal of our conservation program is to take water that's used consumptively outside, such as in swimming pools, landscapes, cooling towers, and make it more efficient or remove useless non-functional turf, bring that water use indoors so we can do more recycling of that water. And again, it's not that we don't want to use water, right? Our conservation program is designed to make it so that we use water thoughtfully and responsibly and sustainably, so that we can do the most and stretch our water supply the furthest for our community. Our entitlement of the Colorado River is just 1.8%, the annual allocation to the 7 basin states and Mexico, right? So because we have that smallest percent, just 300,000 acre feet per year, we have to do our part to make sure that we are very aware of how we're using that water, and we are taking advantage of our infrastructure, specifically those return flow credits.
Yeah, I like your statement there about, look, we're going to use water, right? You can't have an economy without a stable and reliable water supply. So as a community, we're absolutely going to use water, but it's about using water efficiently. It's about using water thoughtfully, as you indicated. And one of those unique things that we've seen in water efficiency is the use of new technology. And Michael Gulich with MGM Resorts, your organization has invested in some really interesting upgrades and new technologies when it comes to improving water efficiency, especially for large cooling systems. Can you talk a little bit about some of those efforts with our listeners and how they're saving water?
Sure. And cooling towers are the single biggest system that uses consumptive water in our resort operations. And so we're very focused on that use. We are in the process of making sure that all of our makeup water in all of our cooling towers are submetered with digital submeters at the inflow and outflow points. And so whether that's water that is flushed through or evaporative losses, we can track that. Maybe going back some time historically, we were primarily focused on energy consumption in those cooling towers. And very much now, it's kind of an integrated approach where we're looking at both energy and water use. And in some cases, the strategies that we undertake save both. And one example of that is we've been working on set point optimization, which is really a controls strategy or where we're tweaking software and changing, inflow and outflow temperatures. But that can have dramatic impacts. And in that case, potentially save us energy and water and money, which is kind of the holy grail. Other technologies that we're evaluating potentially save water, but less energy. And one example of that is a pilot project that we're working on right now with SNWA at Bellagio in the spa tower. We're replacing one of our cooling towers that was at end of life with a dry tower. And so what that means is a typical cooling tower or wet tower is using the phase change of water evaporating to reject heat to the atmosphere. It's very efficient from a physics point of view, but it uses a whole lot of water. And so a dry tower has what we call an air-to-air heat exchanger. And so that uses no water in the process in a dry tower, but it does use more energy typically. So by creating a hybrid plant where we combine existing wet towers with this new dry tower, we're able to, when our load is not at the peak, which we call the shoulder seasons in the spring and the fall, and definitely in the winter, when our load is lower, we can operate solely on that dry tower and in the process save literally millions of gallons. Then when we're more in the peak of the summer, like we are now where we're triple digits for days and we are at peak load, we can run both the wet and the dry tower when we need to. As our water goals and a sharper focus on consumptive water use for us has come into play, as towers get to end of life, we are considering other options like dry towers, or at the very least, looking at water efficiency as a key decision factor in how we decide how we're going to replace those towers. I would also like to highlight a project that is ongoing that is a great partnership example with SNWA, Las Vegas Grand Prix, and WaterStar, where we were approached by the authority and Las Vegas Grand Prix with a need to create water to wash the track prior to the event. And this was last spring, actually, that we were approached. And that concept is to combine two technologies that are both mature but have never been combined anywhere in the world as far as we know. And that is an atmospheric water generator, or an AWG, and a cooling tower. An atmospheric water generator is a piece of mature technology that's typically used in remote operations like mining operations or military operations where they need a clean, reliable source of drinking water, and they don't have that otherwise. It works great in hot, humid environments. It doesn't work at all in dry desert environments like Las Vegas. And actually, when we reached out to the manufacturer to buy the unit for our pilot, they said, we'd love to sell you a unit, but just so you know, it's not going to work in Las Vegas. And we said, okay, we know. But what we did is we combined it with the cooling tower. And so we ducted this warm, moist plume of air, which is very humid, approaching 95% relative humidity at times, into this unit through a fan. And we're actually generating a little more than 1,000 gallons of water a day. And we're approaching 120,000 gallons thus far in terms of our production. And so we've more than offset the water use from the first race, from the race last fall. We're currently talking with the partners about how to keep the unit operating for future events. What's critical in terms of this pilot, there's a couple of things beyond just how cool the technology is. One is, I think, not to speak for Mike or you, Bronson, at the Water Authority, but what's really interesting to me is that your interest is in, we've got almost 1,000 cooling towers in the valley that are going to be here, that are grandfathered in and are presumably going to be here for the foreseeable future. And so the data that we're gathering, and we've got this instrumented like a university research project, the data we're gathering on how well it's working, what impacts the output day to day, we're learning from that. And there's the potential to mine this water across the board. And so could there be a broader scaling of this technology? We'll see. That's what the pilot's all about. But then the other thing that's really exciting for me about this pilot is the partnership approach and the collaboration. And I'm really excited for that approach for all of our sustainability challenges. These challenges are so big that no single entity or us, as big as we are as a company, we're not going to be able to solve these on our own. And so what are the partnership opportunities? In this case, we've got 2 for-profit companies, a public agency, a utility, and a not-for-profit tech incubator coming together with a very focused challenge that we're trying to solve and doing something that's literally never been done in the world. Universities have found out about this pilot project, and they're reaching out to us saying, hey, can we use your data? So I think there's huge opportunities for this partnership model across the board, and I look forward to more of them, and especially more of them with SNWA.
Yeah, so absolutely. I just want to echo Michael's point about the collaboration and partnership. I mean, that's by far the favorite part of my job, is getting to work with really smart people who are committed to our community, to the environment, to sustainability, and coming up with innovative solutions to solve problems around water scarcity, energy efficiency, how to improve the water energy nexus, right? There's always going to be a cost of energy to deliver water or to create water. And with regards to the atmospheric water generator, this is a new source, and being able to operate them on cooling towers is the data that we've gotten with over 1,000 gallons of production per day. That's not a small amount. Atmospheric water harvesting, that industry in general, has come a long way to where it's scalable. And it could be a solution to generating real water in the future, right? Or at least help make cooling towers run more efficiently. The way we have it operated at the MGM Grand with Las Vegas Grand Prix and WaterStart and MGM International is that the water that we capture from the effluent plume of that cooling tower is put back in as makeup water for that tower. So we're essentially capturing the evaporate, condensing it, recycling it back in, and we're essentially evaporating that water multiple times. I mean, it's really exciting to be a part of a project like that. So it's just an example of how there's leaders in the community that are coming up with innovative solutions. At SNWA, we love to, if it can save water, we love to be a part of it. And we want to be there. If we can help financially offset it, if it saves our community a water supply, we have conservation programs and rebates and custom incentives that we can develop to help approach it. And in this case, we're looking at it as a research project. We're developing real data that researchers and scientists can use to determine efficacy in other regions and other markets. So again, it's really exciting. I just want to touch on another piece that Michael said is we have 1,000 cooling towers around the valley and how they hope to put this dry cooling unit as one of the resources within their central plants. For grandfathered existing cooling towers, that's really a great step in the right direction because in the cooler months, winter, when there's still maybe a cooling load required in the daytime, when there's a lot of heat gain from the sun, or the shoulder months such as the fall and the spring, it's an opportunity to not evaporate water and to just use the mechanical or air-to-air heat exchangers to run those central plants and to essentially cool the buildings. And the more we can get that widespread throughout the resort corridor and in other large business properties, the less water that we're going to use for cooling. And the more we can then bring that water indoors so that we can, again, recycle it and get return flow credit and stretch our water resources further. Another key point I want to point out is that in September of 2023, we implemented, as well as the different municipalities around the Las Vegas Valley, an evaporative cooling moratorium. So essentially what that means is for new development with evaporative cooling, whether it be a cooling tower or swamp cooler, you will not be approved for a permit to use any type of evaporative cooling in new development. So essentially what that does is moving forward as we continue to develop economically and grow our community with new industry, it brings, again, this dry cooling aspect to where we're not losing our water resources to the air, to the atmosphere. We're not evaporating it. They're using traditional HVAC, geothermal, thermal energy storage. There's all these different innovative technologies that I see different businesses looking at to explore. And you know, they say necessity is the mother of innovation, right? And I think that's what we're seeing right now. And through that evaporative moratorium. And I hear now other regions in the Southwest are looking at their cooling towers as, you know what, this is a really big source of water loss for our community. And in fact, our community evaporative cooling towers are the second largest consumptive use behind non-functional turf and landscapes, including pools, et cetera. So by addressing those, again, we're able to reduce the water loss exterior to the outside, to the atmosphere, bring that water indoors, and we could stretch it further. So again, the theme of this message is trying to get all of that water that we use and put it in the right place where it has the most value to our community.
That technology is pretty amazing. We've been lucky enough to get up close and personal with that atmospheric water generator and see how it operates and what it's producing so far. So that's super cool. And I also love that story where they said it won't work. And we're like, hold on, we're Las Vegas. Yes, it will. And I don't think anyone would argue that air conditioning is not a necessity here in Las Vegas, especially with the summer we've been having so far. So it's good to know that future resorts and large buildings will have to install cooling systems that don't use as much water as traditional evaporative cooling systems have. And resorts like MGM are looking to upgrade existing cooling systems to more water efficient models. So Michael, let's talk about some of the other projects MGM Resorts has completed. The company's replaced more than 200,000 square feet of grass with artificial turf and other drip irrigated trees and plants. And that project alone is saving the community 11 million gallons of water a year. Can you talk about some of the other projects that MGM is working on to protect our water supply?
Sure. Despite our focus on consumptive use, we have not stopped our conservation efforts indoors with our non-consumptive water. And that includes trying to optimize things like our large laundry operations, thinking about when we're replacing fixtures or adding new fixtures, going with low flow fixtures. And even more broadly, just thinking about our ongoing operations and how we can optimize and conserve water in those operations as well. We're actually up to over 250,000 square feet of grass removed at this point. So, and those have been replaced either with artificial turf or other desert-friendly landscaping systems or strategies. In some cases, we've actually removed water features in our landscape. And a couple examples are around Lady Liberty at New York, New York. She was surrounded by a moat, a water moat before, and that's been replaced with artificial turf. And I don't personally feel like we lost that much impact or effect. We took that opportunity actually to upgrade the lighting when we did that project. We eliminated a water feature at the Excalibur Moat, a water feature at the Mandalay Bay Lobby, and we eliminated a reflection pond at Aria. And so where we feel we are not impacting guest experience and we can save water, we're actively evaluating projects like that. It saves significant amount of water. We are beginning engagement with our suppliers and our supply chain in terms of water conservation and water stewardship, and encouraging best practices and asking for information and data for them and sharing our best practices around water. So hopefully we can share our lessons learned and teach them and raise their level of understanding. I'd also like to highlight some of our employee engagement efforts. In the last 2 years, we've actually had in-house trainings that have been required for our staff around water conservation, water stewardship, and how important these things are to MGM. And in both cases, it's been a training that's had a quiz at the end to make sure that people were paying attention. We have what's called a business resource group. We have a whole series of employee network groups and business resource groups. And one of them is called Planet Protectors, which is focused on the environment and sustainability. And this is a self-selecting group. So it's employees who are interested in these topics. And we provide educational opportunities. So we have Planet Talks 4 times a year. And this year, one of the themes of one of those talks was on water and issues of water broadly. But we also provide through that Planet Protectors volunteer opportunities. These opportunities include things like cleanup at the Springs Preserve. We've done a number of tree plantings, one up in Mount Charleston, one on the Amargosa River, a little north of Las Vegas. So these are opportunities for those who are so inclined to get involved and be part of the solution for water. And a lot of these opportunities are outside of our direct operations, but it really highlights to those employees the value that MGM places on water. And so they're bringing that focus and those values to our day-to-day operations. Another example of employee engagement that I'm super proud of is another SNWA partnership example. Earlier this year on World Water Day, we announced a $500,000 donation to SNWA's Water Efficiency Fund, which is your nonprofit organization for water conservation. And the intent of those dollars is to enhance existing residential water conservation rebates that you had in place. And so I think this is a great example of MGM Resorts putting our money where our mouth is and really communicating the value of water conservation to our employee base. We're the largest private employer in the state. And so there's scale to that, and it matters. We're saying, we not only want you to focus on water conservation when you're at work, we also want you to think about it when you're at home. And the specifics on that are where you're currently providing $5 a square foot this year for turf removal. We're adding $1 to that, bringing that total to $6 a square foot. Where SNWA provided previously 50% up to certain limits for smart irrigation controllers and leak detectors, we've stepped up and said for MGM staff in Southern Nevada, we'll provide the other 50%. So effectively, those pieces of equipment would be free to our staff. And so the program runs actually through the end of next year, through the end of 2025. And we're working with you and your team on tracking how these dollars are being spent, who's taking advantage of these programs. And we're going to quantify how many millions of gallons we saved. And presumably this is on a moving forward basis.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big savings for anyone who can participate in the program right now at $5 a square foot. But MGM adding on that extra dollar really sweetens the pot for their employees to replace their grass with irrigated plants and trees. Mike, can you tell us a little bit more about how that additional incentive for MGM employees work? How would they take advantage of that extra rebate?
Yeah, absolutely, Crystal. Thanks. So you go to www.snwa.com. There's a little search bar. You could search Water Smart Landscapes. and it'll pull up the residential and commercial application. You select which one you're applying for, the $5 per square foot. And if you're an MGM employee, the $1 topper on top of that would be for single family residential only. I just want to say that we have the longest running cash for grass program in the United States, and it is at the highest amount at $5 without MGM employees getting the additional dollar that it's ever been before. So now is the time. If you've ever been on the fence about getting your front or backyard converted to desert landscaping, water smart landscaping, heck, we're even piloting right now alternative lawns. If you really like a green aesthetic, but grass isn't for you, or you have a large area where you're using a lot of water and you'd like to cut down your use, right now at the Springs Preserve, we're working on a demonstration area for Carapia, Dichondra, microclover, and red creeping thyme. And what those are their turf alternatives that are not irrigated by spray, but by subsurface drip. And they're essentially plugs that you plug in about a 12-inch grid, and they grow up. You mow them down, they grow out. You mow them down, and they form into a sod after about 4 to 6 months. And they keep a green aesthetic, and they keep your heat impact. So if you can't use synthetic turf in your backyard, maybe you have kids that like to play out there, it gets hot. Carapia or Dichondra is a great alternative. And we're testing these out right now at the Springs Preserve, where people can actually go there, take your sandals off, walk on it, feel it, see it in real time, and make the decision for yourself. Because water smart landscaping doesn't mean rock and cactus. So I've heard so many times, right? There's so many beautiful xeric landscapes that you can put out there. And now with these alternative lawns that use 70% less water than Bermuda and fescue, it's possible to still have a green aesthetic while being water smart. So again, looking at SNWA.com, Water Smart Landscapes, it's a great opportunity to save the most money that we've ever offered before. And if you're an MGM employee, take advantage of that additional dollar, take advantage of leak detection, take advantage of smart controllers. There's no reason not to. MGM has been an excellent partner. It's been really exciting working with Michael and his team on some of these efforts we've been coordinating together on. There's a lot that has been done, but there's even more that we can achieve together in a partnership. And I look forward to what tomorrow brings.
Well, so much great information being shared there on this partnership. Great results. I mean, this really is a community effort. But Michael, before we let you go, I got to ask you one more question. And with everything that MGM is doing, everything that you just broke down for us, I hope this question doesn't come across as being offensive. So what's next for MGM? You're making these investments, you're making these improvements, your commitment to your outreach to your employees, giving your employees the tools and tactics that they need to be water efficient as well. What's next?
A couple of things I'll mention. One is that we're always looking at new technologies. And so we get vendors and companies reach out to us all the time, whether it's wringing water out of our trash or just different strategies and technologies to make our things like our cooling towers or our pool and water feature filtration systems more efficient. We're evaluating those and seeing if they make sense for us. Even more so than that, we've been on a journey over the past couple of years, and the shift has really been from water conservation focus, which we're still focused on and is still vitally important, to more of a water stewardship model. And what that means for us is it's a shift from not only focusing on our direct operations within our properties and within our operational boundaries. So where in the past we've developed a framework with 5 dimensions, and in the past we thought about 2 of those, which were quantity and measurement. And so reducing how much we use and making sure we had good data on that use. But we've shifted to add 3 more, which are quality, citizenship, and culture. And I think those 2 projects that I highlighted that we're partnering with you on, the Las Vegas Grand Prix project and the enhanced Water Smart Landscape incentive projects, are both examples of citizenship and culture. And so we're thinking more broadly about the basins in which we operate, what the issues are. We're thinking about broader engagement, of course, with our guests and our employees, but also thinking about our supply chain, about the community, about thinking about public policy engagement and innovation, and really doing that across the board, thinking about collective action. So how can we have a greater impact, leveraging the scale at which we operate towards improving and enhancing water issues across the board?
Well, great to hear all of that wonderful work of MGM and even of what's more to come. Mike Bernardo, let's go to you for any closing thoughts.
Thanks, Bronson. So I'm excited to see what's to come and continue to work with MGM on their conservation and stewardship efforts. And for those listening, if they want to learn more about our conservation programs, I encourage them to go to SNWA.com. If you're interested in landscape projects, Water Smart Landscapes is the name of the program. If you're interested in innovative technology programs and you own a business, Water Efficient Technologies is the name of the program. You could search for either of those terms. It'll bring up the website. What's really exciting is the Water Efficient Technologies program. There's a menu of items that you could look at what's right for your business. It goes from waterless urinals, low flow fixtures, low flow shower heads to evaporative cooling conversions. Right now, we're offering $1,500 per ton to go from an evaporative cooler to a dry cooling system. Furthermore, if you're going from evaporative cooling to a hybrid type system, that's $1,025 per ton. And if both of those aren't right from you and you're just trying to get by with your existing equipment, one thing you could do to make it run more efficiently is replace your packing inside your cooling tower. And we have rebates for that, $22.50 per ton to replace your packing and your drift elimination materials. So we have rebates to help be more efficient, to help you replace units that are on end of life, to help you be more innovative. So again, I encourage listeners to go to our website, snwa.com, check out the programs we have. And of course, if you have any questions, contact me and I'd be happy to walk you through and see what we can do for you.
Well, obviously, lots of opportunities for any local business to become more water efficient. The Southern Nevada Water Authority is here to assist. And even if you just have a general concept idea, reach out to us. We're happy to engage with you, talk to you about those things, just like the MGM has done. Michael Gulich from MGM Resorts and Mike Bernardo from the Southern Nevada Water Authority, thank you so much for joining us here on the Water Smarts podcast.
Thank you, Bronson and Crystal and Mike.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, Crystal, another good episode. Getting a lot of good information out there from the MGM and the important work that they're doing to make sure that not only their operations are sustainable and water efficient, but also that their employees are sustainable and water efficient too.
Yeah, and I think as we heard, MGM is the largest or one of the largest private The largest. So they have
in the state.
Thousands of employees. So you think about that collective impact. This morning I was trying to dig up an old video and I found it, and it was about grass conversions, and it had talked about how it starts with an individual, but it takes a community. And that is so true because, I know we get a lot of angst sometimes, our customers or, people who live here in the valley about why me, why the resident? I've already done as much as I can. I've taken out my grass. I've converted. I've tried to do different things. But just to recognize that other industries are involved, businesses, the resorts. And one thing that wasn't mentioned during the podcast is that MGM Resorts, out of all its strip properties, it doesn't have one single patch of grass.
Oh, great point.
Yeah, everything's artificial turf or desert landscaping. It just goes to say that it really is a collective effort here in Southern Nevada.
Yeah, and I like the fact that the MGM really is focusing on that when he talked about citizenship and he talked about, being a part of the community, and it's the right thing to do. We ask all of our residents to follow the seasonal watering restrictions, change that sprinkler clock 4 times a year. We also ask you to go out to your yard and check for leaks and then convert that grass if you're not using it. Now, that's what we've asked residents to do. But we have asked commercial property owners, and especially those on the Strip, to do a whole lot more. We just heard about that. You were talking about millions of dollars in investment that private industry is making in water efficiency. So I think for all of us here as residents, we can all make the investment in time to change that sprinkler clock 4 times a year. Check for those leaks. And certainly if you have any grass, take advantage of the Water Smart Landscape rebate program. Convert that grass to water efficient desert landscaping. You can do a Mediterranean style landscaping, artificial turf. Lots of options there for you. They're all more water efficient. They will keep the beauty of your home and bring some diversity into the home. And the bees, the hummingbirds, the butterflies, all of those pollinators, they'll thank you for it. Well, that's it for this episode here on the Water Smarts podcast. We hope you subscribe and listen next time. And if you like the show, give us a rating. It really does help us reach more Southern Nevadans just like you. And there's lots more information about conservation, water quality, new technologies, and everything you need to know to be water smart You can find all of those tips and videos and other resources on SNWA.com. Thanks for listening, and we hope you join us here next time on Water Smarts.